After 8 months of battling, we're down to the final tournament to decide, after a year's worth of hard work, who from North America is going to go on to DreamHack Sweden for a chance to win the OWCS Championship. 6 teams go in, but only 3 will keep their dreams alive. Who has the best chance to make it, and who's going to win this Stage 3 tournament? We'll talk about all of that and more as I break down, preview, and predict the OWCS NA Stage 3 Championship. We'll go over the teams, how we're feeling about them, a general power rankings, so to speak, and then we'll proceed from there. This tournament is basically a carbon copy of the first 2, where you have a few winners that go on to a LAN. You're competing for a prize pool, but the only real difference here is there's more pressure, since this is what everybody's been fighting for the entire season, essentially. Not to mention that we want to see who truly is the best of the best here in NA as we head towards Sweden to see who really does have the best chance of all to do some kind of damage in that tournament as a potential underdog. And right now, it's anybody's guess if we're being honest. NA was ultra competitive between the top dogs. SSG returned to top form, and they were able to go out there and compete against Liquid and Geekay. All 3 of these teams played each other in 5 map affairs in the qualifiers, so it truly could be anyone's game, especially knowing that the meta really may not change all that much despite the patch. Maybe Wu Yang gets a bit less playtime in favor of Kiri Lucio. Maybe we see a little more Mauga just because he did receive a buff. Perhaps him and Reaper could be a pretty decent combination together. But generally, it feels like a lot of the stuff that we have been seeing will probably still remain pretty strong and relevant. So I'm not going to expect a lot of change, especially on short notice. These teams have 2 weekends to get it together. They may not experiment that much and just go with what they know. In terms of how I'm going to rank these teams, I think at number 1, my favorite to win the championship would probably be Team Liquid. I don't exactly feel good about that because they have choked a couple of tournaments already, but they clearly were the strongest or I guess you could say the clutchest. They won 2 big map 5s. They went undefeated, and this is their first time actually pulling that feat off. They're clearly getting stronger over time, and it seems like they're pretty locked in. They really made use of the long break they got in Stage 2, and they seem better than ever now. Infected's been holding down the fort by showing off great flexibility, playing Wrecking Ball and Winston for the dive purposes, but showing great counterplay against a team like Geekay, going on to the Sigma and being pretty dominant on that hero as well. He's been a real leader, and I think he brings the most to the table of any of the top NA tank players right now, so that's a huge advantage for Liquid. Not to mention that their DPS have been competitive against everyone. Tree's been locking in. He's looked great on that Freya so far this stage, and, you know, in general, I think that RuPaul and Vega have gained even more consistency. I think Vega in these qualifiers has put together his best stage of the year so far. This was absolutely the most complete stage that Liquid has put together so far in their time being a roster. And it's very clear that they're applying a lot of their learning lessons from shortcomings of previous stages to right now. They're clutching out big games when they need to. It's not always pretty, but they went undefeated this stage. They're making the necessary adjustments in series, which is something that they weren't doing beforehand, and it seemed like they always had to claw themselves out of a really deep hole, but that hasn't been the case so far. Obviously, playoffs are a different beast. They've beaten GK before in qualifiers just for it to not matter, but this is a really good sign for Liquid. It seems like they're peaking right at the perfect time as we head towards DreamHack. But let's be real, it's not going to be some kind of cakewalk, because they did just barely beat SSG and GK. Both these teams have equal chances of taking them first place as well. In terms of who I'd rank as my number 2 team in terms of odds to win the NA Stage 3 title, I think I'm actually going to go with GK despite them losing to SSG. I'd be lying if I said that loss wasn't a rough one. They really fell apart at the end and had a horrible map 5. Everybody was absolutely trolling in that situation. They've come up short 2 times, which is not something they're accustomed to. They're used to being the clutch team more than anything else, so it was a weird change of pace for them. But you can't rule them out when it comes to these games that actually mean something. Did they not also have shortcomings in Stage 1 and even Stage 2 just for them to pull out in the end? I mean, that's my thought process at least. When it matters, they turn up the heat and they saved their best Overwatch for last. Are there flaws and weaknesses that potentially got pointed out by SSG and Liquid? I mean, absolutely. It seems like they may be a little one-dimensional with the fast-paced dive. We saw SSG slow it down, play a lot of that Zarya composition, and it gave them some trouble. We saw Liquid go out there, counter their Wrecking Ball strategy with Sigma as well. Clearly, they have their work cut out for them if they want to beat some of these team strategies, but if there's one team I can count on to adjust, and again, play better when the lights are at their brightest, it's these guys. Kuffa maybe plays a bit more Hazard instead of the ball. Maybe UV locks in on the Kiriko. Maybe Maimon makes up for the bad Sombra performance with a much better one, or swapping over to Tracer. I think the adjustments are going to be there nonetheless though, and there's a good chance they make it back to yet another NA Finals. It feels weird not having them at this point, just knowing the dominance we've seen the last handful of stages. You can't count these guys out. It feels like they're down, but they're certainly not out. We're going to have to see some major adjustments, but this is one team that I think you can trust to make it happen. Then just barely at my number 3 spot, that leaves us with SSG, the only other realistic team that's going to make it to Stockholm, if we're being honest. This team is absolutely positively back. I wasn't quite sure heading into the stage, I'll be for real with you. They made some desperation changes in hoping of saving their season, and it's worked out in the best way humanly possible. Hawk, even though he took a long break, he has come in and looked like one of the best tanks in North America through and through. His Zarya and D.Va play have been phenomenal, and it's been such a big boost to have his leadership. I think that veteran presence has gone a long way, and it's just great to see him reunite with Sugarfree, who used to play in Atlanta Academy together back in the day. Those two are the leaders of this team, right? They're the superstars that contribute the most almost always, but they're definitely not the only great players on this team. I think from top to bottom, they finally feel like a well-oiled machine and not just Sugarfree trying to carry a bunch of random players. You know, the vibes are totally different. I think they've got the right pieces all working together synergy-wise, and there's just more focus. Maybe Christopher has helped bring some more structure to that team as well. But I'll be for real, I think more than anything else, I've loved the development of CJ. He's peaking in his career. That was the best stretch of Overwatch I think we've ever seen him play so far as a professional. He was lights out on the Wu Yang and on the Kiriko. A major contributor that helped this team push Geekay to their limits and nearly beat Team Liquid as well. He's been on a tear the last couple of weeks, and it's coming at the perfect time. Knowing that a patch was coming, I was a little concerned that they might get nerfed just because Zarya seems like she's so good and they happen to rely on that Zarya Reaper composition quite a bit, but no real changes happen, no notable changes. And if Malga gets some playtime, I think that works to their advantage as well. SSG are still going to be really strong. I think that the meta is lining up perfectly for them to play up to their strong suit and have a chance to compete. I think that if they did get nerfed with some of that stuff and they had to more so play up to what these other teams were doing, they'd probably be screwed. But they've got the Zarya, the D.Va, and maybe the Malga pick at their disposal alongside some Ram here and there. So they're going to be chilling. They're going to be comfortable, and they don't really have to worry about practicing new things, which really works out well for them and could maybe give them that boost needed to get up to first place here. If they just focus on what they're good at and they play their bands right, I don't think anybody would be surprised if they take home first. They are right there. But even so, I'm still having them at third place in terms of my power rankings and likelihood to take home first place. They're probably almost certainly locked to make it to DreamHack Sweden at this point, but I just don't know if I trust them to make it to that championship game and or win it. I think there's a bit less in terms of viable compositions that they can play compared to the other top dogs. They've also lost to Liquid, which I don't think helps their case, and Geekay again are just a different animal in a playoff bracket, so it's going to be really tough on them. Then obviously continuing down in the power rankings, there's a major tier break between the top three and everybody else. We're not going to talk about Extinction or Dilducks. They're done, and there's no relegation to even look forward to at this point, so we'll focus on the three remaining teams. Of those teams, the only one that even has a remote chance of potentially pulling off an upset is Nightmare. They're still a pretty solid roster. They pulled off an upset last stage. It's just that now SSG are so much stronger than they used to be, so it's going to be a lot tougher for Nightmare to beat any of these teams, to take advantage of someone who's truly vulnerable, because I don't know if there is anyone at this point. Had the meta changed up significantly, maybe that team could have been SSG, but that just doesn't seem to be the case. Nightmare very clearly fell behind going off of the results. They didn't play a close game against SSG, Liquid, or Geekay. They got destroyed by all of them, and that's just not a promising sign heading into this thing. I think at this point, the magic is probably over. I've doubted this Nightmare team a lot, and they've proven me wrong a lot as well. But I think this is where it finally ends. The top dogs are too locked in for them to handle, in my opinion, and it's just going to be hard to find any kind of opening, despite having a very likable team. Rocket has shown that he belongs. He is an elite DPS player. Painkiller and Rhino are also a pretty solid and reliable duo. You've got two different unique playstyles that you can play around. Rhino's Wrecking Ball and Winston, or Painkiller on the Zarya, Diva, Ramatra. You've got choices. You've got players with a high IQ that are hungry to compete, but they may not have enough manpower to compete with these top teams. That's what it feels like, unfortunately. It's going to take a miracle at this point for them to pull off another upset. Obviously, one is all it takes, but with how strong the top three look right now, their chances are the smallest they have been in a very long time. The only thing I'll give Nightmare is they're clearly number 4. Like, there's a tier break between them and the top 3, but then Sakura and Team Z are also pretty far behind them as well. So they're kind of stuck in purgatory. They're by themselves here at 4th. And yeah, from there, I don't have all that much to say about Sakura or Team Z. We all know they're going to be first round exits, barring any miracles. I'm impressed that they both made it here. I had doubts about both of them, especially Team Z. I did not think they were making the cutoff. I thought for sure that Extinction was a better team, but they went out there and they truly gave them the smoke. That dude, Ryan, is a bad man. He dominated in that series on Tracer and deserves a shout out for at least making his team get this far. It was an impressive collective effort to do just enough to clutch out a spot in the NA playoffs. This is a big step compared to what this team accomplished beforehand, so congrats to them. So yeah, let's talk about my thoughts on how this playoff bracket goes. So generally, the only thing that matters is the top 3. Who wins this just basically gets pride and more prize money. But what really matters is qualifying for DreamHack Sweden. That's the big event that you want to get to. And it's very obviously going to be Liquid, GK, and SSG that make it. It would take a miracle for Nightmare to get there at this point. It would take an epic collapse, probably. So we're just going to stick with what we know here. These top 3 teams are just so much better than everyone else. They're playing at such a high level right now, and there's just no way they're going to be stopped by any of the other NA teams. Now I'd like to briefly discuss my bracket and who I think takes home first place, as I do think it's at least somewhat important to decide who's the best of this region, just because it is so competitive right now. It's the best it's ever been. There are some really good teams, and I think whoever comes out of this in first place in one piece is going to have a good chance to make some noise in DreamHack Sweden. I thought hard about this, but decided to stick with my power rankings for who I think is going to win. I have Team Liquid winning the NA Grand Finals against GK in a 6-map affair. Liquid have a really good advantage going for themselves as clearly the most flexible team. There's more that they can get away with because they're good at multiple compositions, which some of these other teams you can't really say as much for. This team can really win games through the bans, I feel. They don't get affected by them as much as these other teams, and they can just play it strategically and save certain heroes for the right moment. And when you combine that with this ability to strategize and come up with these pocket counter strats, like again with the Sigma for the GK ball, it seems like Liquid are in a good spot and they hold a lot of the cards. At this point, it's on them and their own abilities to make it happen. And I think it's time. I believe it is time for a change, for someone else to win first place in NA. It's really hard to go against GK just because of how insane they are in these championship games. But right now, they've looked the weakest they've had in a very long time, and Liquid look the strongest they have, so I'm rolling with them. I think they truly are the best team in North America right now, and they're finally going to make it happen. As for the second and third place slots, it was pretty hard for me to make a choice. I mean, just going against Geekay to not win a championship in general was difficult for me, despite the results of the qualifier, just because they always find a way, and I also don't think they played their best series against Liquid or SSG. They threw against SSG in map 5, and against Liquid, it felt like for the most part they were in control of that series, but they kind of just let it slip for whatever reason. They could very easily storm back and get first again, but I think because they have looked more human, that I don't feel as comfortable picking them to win it all. I still think they'll make it to the finals. I think they are a better team than SSG. I think they have a bit more going for themselves, but it's a pretty tough call. Them and SSG, they may go back and forth. I'm expecting them to meet multiple times in this tournament, and they could end up splitting it. It really comes down to who's better with their strategy, with those timely hero bans and map selection. That's ultimately where this game is won and lost, right? If Geekay maybe start off by winning the first map, then they can play the long game. Ban Zarya on a more grounded map, maybe avoid her on a map with a lot of verticality, and then you can win this series in 5. But on the other side of things, if you're SSG, if you get off to a good start, you can play the long game. The Winston did absolutely nothing against that Zarya Reaper comp, so maybe we see more of the same there. This is going to be such an interesting series that comes down to some of that decision making. But again, when it comes to execution and the proven track record, Geekay to me are just a little bit stronger, hence why I'm picking them. Not an easy choice, but I do believe in them just a little bit more compared to SSG, who I do think are slightly more limited. No matter what though, this could go any of 3 ways. These 3, it's like a 99.9% chance are going to DreamHack Sweden, but what happens when they play each other is just about anyone's guess at this point. It's the most excited I've ever been for an NA tournament, I think, in the OWCS era. It's going to be super hype, and I'd love to know what you think happens down in the comments below. Who do you believe in the most to get first place? With that said, I'm just about done here. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new. It helps out tremendously. I appreciate all of you guys watching, and I'll catch you in the EMEA video coming tomorrow. Peace.